interested in hearing philosophy when it is spoken by a child. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadapayam Tadati Swapadantikam. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Dear devotees, please accept my respects and obeisances. So today we have, see who we have here. Okay, I have a good number of devotees online. So there are a couple things, a few things actually. So I'm usually, when I try to study for a class, I try to get insight from other devotees, from Srila Prabhupada, and like that. So I hear different classes or read different resources, Gita and like that. I haven't been so well, so I didn't have as much of an opportunity to do that. But I'm still very grateful to have some opportunity to have meditated a little bit on these words of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. So I was hearing from a dear God sister a little bit about the history of this particular king. The name is a little difficult for me to pronounce. It's King Svagya. I think that's how you say his name. I might be a little off there. And I was hearing how this king, usually Yamaraj, he comes only for, according to Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he gives an explanation as to why Yamaraj came personally, because usually at death, it's the superintendents, the servants, the Yamadutas, are the ones that will usually come for the conditioned soul when they leave their body. And in this case, we see Yamaraj personally coming to the situation of this particular soul and the lamenting wives. And we're hearing all of this from Hiranyakashipu. Although Hiranyakashipu obviously doesn't have any realization in this particular pastime, he doesn't have any realization of what he's actually talking about. But everything he's saying is scripturally based. And in that way, it's valid and we can actually learn from it. So, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is describing that actually amongst these wives of this dead king, some of them were devotees. And the king, as Prabhupada is describing, as a pious soul. And so Yamaraj, out of compassion, and he's coming also, as we hear in the pastimes of, the pastimes of Ajamil, where he was a devotee and he did so many activities that were not pious, but by remembering the name of his son, at death, he was calling so sincerely, and due to all of his previous activities, even the Yamadutas came, but they were not able to take him because he was no longer under their jurisdiction. So, in this way, because there are devotees present and we're actually holding on to the body, which then the soul of the king who was attached to the body was not going. The Yamadutas were not coming there. So Yamaraj came. And how he came as a little boy. And also in this circumstance, for some little boy just to walk up is also, it's understood that it had to be a very special boy to be able to enter into this whole scene. And as we hear, Prabhupada describes that the child, the nature of children is that they're basically welcome and they're very attractive by their innocence. And so the philosophy, when it's spoken by that combination of innocence, people are more open. So it becomes very, very attractive. And this I can see personally, especially through my daughter Danya, since she was, I guess she could start talking. Whatever she hears, she repeats. So a lot of times when we'd go on books, she would repeat things to people in such a way. And because of her being a child and innocent, a lot of people didn't have their guards up, so they would just, um, hear her out and become astonished. So, like that, children are very attractive, and when they speak high philosophy, then it becomes quite attractive. And then there's other examples in Bhagavatam of children speaking, very advanced souls speaking. There's the example of Dhruva Maharaj, who as a young boy, he spoke the philosophy, which was very attractive. Then there's example also of Prahlad Maharaj, who as a young child, due to his previous amazing story of serving, he was serving as a child, and then in his next life, no, I'm sorry, I got it mixed up with Dhruva. No, Prahlad Maharaj, in the womb, he was hearing from Narada Muni, and he's a great Mahajan. So he naturally was preaching and describing the glories of the Lord to all his friends and demons. And then there's also, there's Dhruva, there's Prahlad. There was one more. It just skipped my mind. But if anybody else can think of other examples in the Bhagavatam. So yes, there's amazing examples of children who speak, and the other aspect of this pastime is the lamentation. That here you have this child coming to speak, and it was actually Yamaraj. Out of duty and compassion, he's coming, the great Vaishnava. And this lamentation of the wives, it was so deep and so great that even Prabhupada says, Harsha Shoka. Yes, thank you, Dasya Prabhu. Dasya Prabhu was saying Harsha Shoka, the son of Chitraketu, who also gave philosophy to his father as a soul coming back to instruct him. Yes, thank you. So the cries of these wives were so deep that Yamaraj came, and some of them were devotees even. So, the initial instruction we hear from Bhagavad Gita is, those who are wise, they lament neither for the living nor the dead. And here, it's a very basic principle, but it's very high level of realization, actually, to accept that initial attachment to the body and those in relation to the body. It's a very powerful attachment. Of course, we're recommended by Krishna that attachment to the body is based out of ignorance. And in the purport here, Prabhupada, he's describing, let me go back here to this purport. Was it this purport? Oh, maybe it was maybe it was in the previous purport, how Prabhupada was saying about the nature of the nature of the ignorance of how Hiranyakashipu was speaking this history, and this, Hiranyakashipu himself lived millions of years ago, and what he's speaking of was even prior history. So the nature of this lamentation based off of the attachment to the body is stemming from ignorance, and it is not something new, and it's always been there. And so this, we can see, this is evidence that no amount of time can actually cut the bonds of ignorance, that it takes an intervention to cut this thick knot of ignorance in the heart. And that intervention, we can see, comes through the grace of the Vaishnavas. So as practicing devotees, I was meditating how it may seem almost impossible to actually achieve such a platform of having no attachment for the body, as it's very real for a conditioned person like myself to get sick or to have some body ailment, or even the ties of affection to family are very strong, and it's all based, these are all things in relation to the body, but there's such a reality that it can be overwhelming. And to know theoretically that, okay, I'm not this body, I can, I can move on, I can focus on other things, it's not the end all and be all. And then there's a greater force, which is the grace of the Vaishnavas, which allow us, even though we may not be on a self-realized platform, they allow us to engage in transcendental devotional loving service. And I was really thinking about Srila Prabhupada lately, because yesterday His Holiness Rana Swami, he was giving a talk at the Matchless Gifts, where Prabhupada first opened up a shop in New York. And the history that was being shared there, and some of the stories that were being relayed, were just to feel the mood of what it was like for Srila Prabhupada as our founder Acharya and as a great Vaishnava, how he started off so simple and so humble, and so much tribulation and trials he went through, and how much that he went through, but still he didn't give up, out of his love and his compassion and his attachment to the instructions of his spiritual master, and his attachment for Krishna, how much he endured and how much he went through. And which is why we're here today and our movement is where it is. And so I was thinking on the other side how everything in Bhakti Yoga is a matter of transforming and dovetailing our mistaken tendencies towards the material energy, and redirecting them towards the spiritual energy by the grace of the devotees and the spiritual master. And so the aspect of attachment, and then the other aspect of lamentation, Prabhupada was a lot of times displaying transcendental lamentation for the conditioned souls and the state of their consciousness. And so seeing that there are spiritual emotions and there are spiritual engagements. And so although the experiences from myself, from the platform of a conditioned living entity, I can see that there is a place for all of these things, and due to ignorance they have been misplaced. And of course, the medicine that we're given to cut this ignorance is through the chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. And so by chanting Hare Krishna, we are able to not only, as Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, as the Chaito Darpana Marjanam, that it is the cleansing of the heart. And as we've heard from Bhagavatam, that the message of Godhead is like the rising sun. And Prabhupada gives the example of how, and it's also, I believe also Bhaktivinoda Thakur in his writings, he describes more about the holy name as well, how it's like the light. The examples given like in the dark room, when you put light on, then you're able to see everything in the room. So the holy name is like that. It lights up the consciousness within, and we are able to see things more clearly. And one of the initial things is, of course, devotional service is not, in its devotional service, the goal of devotional service, of chanting Hare Krishna, is not to necessarily, the goal is not detachment from the body, and the goal is not necessarily relief of the bodily sufferings and all these things. The goal is pure love for Krishna. But according to the Nectar Devotion given to us by the Goswamis, the byproduct of devotional service is detachment and knowledge. So these are byproducts that come. So one doesn't have to artificially impose these concepts in an unnatural way. For example, there may be, at least as initial devotees, sometimes there's a fear that, if I become too attached, especially within marriage, as a beginner devotee, there can be a fear that if I become too attached to my husband or my wife or my child, then that's illusion and ignorance, which there's an aspect of truth, but it's not a completely matured realization. And I am not fully realized yet in that aspect of being detached, but there is the other aspect of positive encouragement, was to utilize that attachment to serve together in Krishna consciousness. And what does that mean? That means to make food and offer to Krishna. And in that way, only take Krishna prasadam. And that way the family is sanctified. Also making the center of the whole center of the desire or goal of the family is to be Krishna conscious, which according to everybody's capacity, everybody's at a different position in their life according to their where they live, their financial abilities, and all of those things. Their particular engagement of how they engage their resources in Krishna consciousness may vary, but the idea is that according to the Goswamis, they say if we have some income, we give 50% towards the propagation of Krishna consciousness. And even nowadays, that 50%, for some may be a lot, and for others may be less. And even we hear patram pushpam palam toyam, may bhakta, Krishna says, according to our means, whatever we have, if we offer with love and devotion, Krishna will accept. And the main ingredient is that love. So helping each other to remember, to focus on Krishna, learn about Krishna, hear about Krishna, remember Krishna. And those are the main instructions. The essence of all instructions, Rupa Goswami says, is to always remember Krishna and never forget Krishna. And of course, we have great examples like Bhaktivinoda Thakur. He set a great standard for family life, which was to rise early, chant our rounds, engage in our household duties, and then in the evening, do some type of kirtan, bhajan with family, and like that, study the scriptures. And so it's fairly basic, but it's very powerful, and it does take a bit of grace and association to continue it regularly. So even though the phone and the internet and so many things can actually be a source of distraction and unhealthy attachments, but if we utilize these things to hear classes about Krishna, to hear different devotees around the world speaking about Krishna, to see different ways in which devotees are engaged in devotional service, and see the festivals, and like that, you utilize it in a way, or even for those of us that feel so inspired, we can use it as a platform to share about Krishna. So yeah, there's another point that I was thinking of, how one can actually gradually make steps out of this strong attachment to the body. And Prabhupada gives us the 10th and 11th chapters of Bhagavad Gita. In there we hear about there's a lot of nice points in the 10th chapter, and then it goes into the 11th chapter of Bhagavad Gita about the universal form. And in there, I've also heard it could either be I'm not sure if it was a talk or a conversation of Srila Prabhupada, but he was saying how for those who are materially attached, they can perceive the Lord through through this material manifestation, meaning like the things in this world that are visible to our senses, that we can see, that are great or grand or opulent, and see them as a part of the Lord's body in different ways. And then we have that also in Srimad Bhagavatam. So we get many descriptions how, we have the descriptions of the sun and the moon and the water and the aquatics in the water, the different personalities, the different qualities, and of all of those, Krishna says, of this I am, like of the aquatics, I am the shark, and like that. And he goes through all these different, and there's very beautiful meditation. So initially, that feeling that one gets when they meditate on these things is gratitude. And I was remembering Prabhupada was saying how one of the easiest ways to perceive that gratitude, I'm paraphrasing here, is through nature. And this attitude of gratitude, this gratitude is a stepping, it's like a little step into the into the big realm of faith in Krishna, to have some gratitude, even if it's for Krishna's creation, that is better than not acknowledging any aspect of God or Krishna. And so we see the pattern in history, before there was a rampant promotion for atheistic ideology that, I mean, it's always been there, but now it's, you know, growing more and more. That anybody in their line of work, like, for example, especially in the science area, um, a lot of biologists and different aspects of science, those that they teach that are like the so-called founding fathers of science. I'm not a scientist by any means, but I did go to school, and the very little bit that they did teach me, when you look at some of these older scientists, they had some appreciation for the nature. They had some appreciation and acknowledgement that there is a sense of awe or a sense of reverence for the glories of nature, and how intricate or how miraculous or how amazing nature is when one really studies it, you know, and then, you know, just step by studying plants, or the nature of birth, or these different things, when one really, or the nature of the body itself and all of its components, how intricate they are and how they're going on seemingly to be on their own. Um, it's quite astounding. So, like this gratitude is a big stepping stone, and so with this gratitude, when it increases and increases and increases, it eventually develops into the attitude of service. When we become grateful enough, we actually want to do something in return. We want to do some service. So that is the natural progress of one's spiritual understanding, even if it is from the standpoint of neutrality. Um, and so when we come to that platform of wanting to serve, um, then things start rolling more in our devotional service, and um, this material creation is made specifically with the investment of ignorance in it. And it's, as Krishna says, no, Arjuna says, it's in Gita, he's telling Krishna that it's, you know, it seems like, you know, it's the to control it, even to control the mind is like more difficult than the wind, and what to speak of all the other senses. And because, you know, Arjuna is lamenting initially in Bhagavad Gita due to these various misconceptions, which seem very knowledgeable, but they're all based off of the body. And in that way, there can be a lot of confusion. So, this lamentation that he is having, um, you know, Krishna is cutting it out in different ways. And it's first done through when Arjuna first accepts the fact that, you know, I don't know anything, Krishna, you please teach me. So there's an attitude of, also of humility has to be there, and acceptance of one's position of not knowing, or being overwhelmed in such a way that we want to actually take guidance. So there's various factors of taking a humble position and also being grateful. And in that way, we can actually take advantage of the mercy that is being given by Srila Prabhupada and our Vaishnav saints. So let me check the time here. Okay, we have about 20 minutes. If anybody has anything they'd like to add or comment or corrections.
Hare Krishna.
Yes, Dasya Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for giving class today. Yeah, nice to hear about that's all the points you gave. I was just thinking two comments that I've heard um, by great souls, like related to this last theme that you've been talking about, the gratitude and yeah. So for the gratitude, His Holiness Radhanath Swami, or sorry, um, I think it was His Holiness Devamrita Swami actually said that it's yeah, gratitude is an essential ingredient for the devotee, because like you were saying, then they can, like your devotional service can get rolling. I like that because yeah, you're actually doing it with some like feeling and more desire. And then I heard another quote, was that from another devotee, was that she was quoting Prabhupada and saying that actually this world, like we hear a lot, like this world is a place of misery, but she was saying that actually for the devotee it can actually be a place of like a almost like a place of pleasure. And it's interesting to think about that because yeah, we do hear so much about how like this world is a place of misery, but then according to her in this quote that she gave Prabhupada, that like when one is living in accordance with the ways of the Lord and the ways of nature, it kind of is in more harmony with um, Krishna and like yeah, Krishna and just knowing about the nature of the material world by the grace of like Krishna's instructions through the Shastras, then you can actually then this place can actually be a pleasurable place. Um, which I was kind of it was I don't know, it was kind of a little surprising to hear at first, but I can see how that works, and kind of your what you were saying kind of made me remember about that.
Yeah, thank you, Prabhu. Yeah, devotees are Vaishnavas are para dukkha dukhi. The happiness of the other living entities is their happiness, and their suffering is their suffering. So, like this, there's many layers to great Vaishnavas that they're quite sober, and for themselves they don't have any concerns. They're completely absorbed in pure loving devotional service. But for others, they have this strong compassion, because they can feel how they can genuinely feel their suffering. So, in that sense, the Uttama Adhikari, they come down to the platform um, of discriminating for the purpose of preaching. And so our dear Srila Prabhupada, he could have stayed happily doing his devotional service in Vrindavan, um, but he came and he did the service for us. And Prabhupada was even saying, was hearing how he was saying that I can't remember the context, but I'm sure somebody will remember that he was describing how he told Krishna, I don't want to come to this horrible place. But Krishna told him to come, and of course Krishna facilitated everything for him, and still, even as we see examples of great devotees, they still have to go through the things in this world. I mean, he suffered two heart attacks, multiple heart attacks. His old age, I mean, you read in the Prabhupada Lilamrita, got gored by a bull in the hot sun when he was just trying to distribute magazines in India, when he was first starting the Back to Godhead magazines, like this. So there's the external sides of, they actually do go through some suffering, but their internal, their meditation is so deep, and they have so much love. And for someone conditioned, it's, the word pleasure and all these things is usually pertaining to the body and the mind. So yeah, it, for preaching purposes, we try to encourage the reality of, seeing how this, things in relation to this body and attachment to this body is actually quite suffering, because the tendency is, from a conditioned state, is it makes us forget about Krishna. But when we're like that on a transcendental platform, then everything we see, everything we do, it reminds us of Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you for that elaboration. You added a lot to that. And I just want to substantiate my last point with a quote, because it was kind of vague, the one I gave, but yeah, Prabhupada said in a class in Melbourne that by like worshiping the deities and doing their devotional activities, he said this place will become Vaikuntha. This isn't Melbourne. You're not in London. You're not in Los Angeles. This place would be Vaikuntha, which we know is translation of the word Vaikuntha is without anxieties. Then Prabhupada got fired up, and he said, "No, actually, this would be like Goloka."
That's so sweet. Yeah, I was just being reminded, thank you, Prabhu, that yesterday when I was hearing the talk, in that Matchless Gifts, how, and there was a story being retold about because the whole meditation was on, Srila Prabhupada and the devotees at that time. And he was retelling the story of Hayagriva, and how Hayagriva, he actually went on a Jaladuta, but at a different time of Srila Prabhupada, and he went to India to try to find a guru, and then he came back, and then he saw Srila Prabhupada walking in the streets of New York, and he approached Prabhupada and he asked him, "Are you coming from India?" And Prabhupada asked him, Are you coming from India?" He said, "Are you?" So, at that time he didn't realize why Prabhupada would ask him that question. But for some time, after some difficulties, Hayagriva Prabhu wasn't in the Krishna consciousness movement, and Prabhupada, he spoke on it, and he said that, I'm not sure if he wrote a letter. I think he wrote a letter to him. It's a famous letter, where he says that because you have once sincerely chanted Hare Krishna in Vrindavan, or he said, because you have once sincerely chanted the holy name of Krishna in Vrindavan, Krishna will save you. So, like, that is it's the mercy that even sometimes we may not, whatever, due to whatever reasons, whatever faults we may have, the mercy of the Vaishnavas, the mercy of the great souls, and mercy of Krishna is really kind, and they're the most grateful. So that's also a plus side to think about as well. See if anybody else has anything they'd like to comment or share.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Gai Prabhu.
Thank you so much for a very enlivening class. Sorry I can't show my video. So my question relates to basically cultivating this innocence. As we know, Prabhupada, he coined the maxim, purity is the force. And Prabhupada's disciples have remarked, it's stated in quite a few testimonials in the Lilamrita, that they would, when they would look on Prabhupada and hear him, they would just hear this innocence as well. And was one of Prabhupada's attractive qualities. We see also in the four Kumaras as well. They when they give a public discourse on the philosophy, it's very convincing. We also see in Krishna as well, in his form, Krishna, he's Navayovanam and he stays as, a 16-year-old youth. And so we see this childlike characteristic as being very attractive and convincing. And you can actually use it to convince people to turn to Krishna very effectively, just as Yamaraj is doing. So how do we cultivate it, but not in a... Do you cultivate this quality, or does it just come as a result of advancing in devotional service? Particularly, does it come when you reach your Swarup Siddhi and know your constitutional position, that you'll have a youthful form, and therefore those youthful characteristics will just shine through because you've advanced in devotional service? Or can one cultivate it even in the stage of anartha nivritti? So, for example, could you be, it's like maintaining your existence in this world is very difficult. And so you require a bit of passion. And passion does make you a little old because you have to worry about so many things, But goodness, and just like as you were speaking about your daughter, children aren't worrying about maintenance of their existence, and therefore they can just, that purity can still shine through. So that's really my question: is can you cultivate it even before you achieve Swarup Siddhi, or does it just come as a result of advancing in devotional service?
Yeah, there's a lot of points there, Prabhu. The question, I mean, I'm sure there are other devotees on here that could probably answer it in a very nice, succinct way. If anybody else would like to comment after me, please do. There's just a couple things. First of all, the Swarup Siddhi that you're talking about attaining. I've heard it from Jaipatak Maharaj and other devotees, quoting Srila Prabhupada, that our Swarup in this material world, our proper understanding of that, is the eternal servant of Krishna. That is our position, always. So that is our Swarup. We are eternal servants of Krishna. So realization of that and all of that, you're saying, there's different stages, right? Anartha nivritti, all these things. Then there's the other aspect that you brought up about innocence and the soul and passion and all of these things mixed in. So one thing I've always comes to mind as far as like outreach and things like that is knowing that I'm not actually preaching. Srila Prabhupada is preaching. My spiritual master is preaching. I'm just assisting. You're just not trying to get in the way. So like that, maintaining the aspect of who we are and what our service is to our spiritual master. So, um, knowing that the books are there, everything is given there. We just repeat. Prabhupada said, my only qualification is that I'm just repeating the message of my Guru Maharaj, that I'm not changing anything. So, like that, if we stick to the guidance and the instructions and the words given by the spiritual master and Srila Prabhupada, even if we have no personal qualification, just by repeating, that is our qualification, that we stick strictly to what is being spoken and taught by the acharyas. So that is very powerful in itself. And also the simplicity, or that innocence. In a broader sense, the initial thing that Prabhupada said, what makes so attractive is that there's no sex desire. So children, that is not fully manifest yet. Of course, these great Mahajan children, they don't have that sex desire. But from the perspective of karma of children in this material world, generally that sex desire isn't activated till later, which is why they're very attractive. And Prabhupada was very attractive because he wasn't under that influence of that sex desire. So becoming free from sex desires, we know Brahma in creation, that's one thing that's there within all living entities. So how to become free from that? We strictly stick to the process of devotional service, and no matter what, we keep trying and trying, and the process works in such a way that eventually one loses taste for the sex desire, and it's just like someone trying to give up eating abominable things. That's one of our lesser struggles for devotees, but also because of the culture, the so-called culture of modern day and things like that, it's all aggravating that desire. So for those devotees who are coming in without any, they're trying to be devotees, or those that are coming to the process, it's quite a bit of an adjustment in that respects. But overall, I mean, just following the process, repeating and doing like that according to our spiritual master's instructions, amazing things happen, and that grace comes. So like your Guru Maharaj, I remember you asked him a question in the class, and then he said, you could be the, because you were asking if there are any grihastas that have their home that's like Vaikuntha, right? And he said you could be that household. So yeah, so you already have the blessings of your spiritual master. So
Thank you so much. Really appreciate that answer.
okay, Krishna. Anybody else would like to comment anymore or add anything?
I'd like to comment a little that Gauri Krishna Babu was asking about separately cultivating an attitude of innocence. There really is no means by which you can separately, independently, or artificially try to cultivate any transcendental qualities. They are innate. They exist within the soul, but they are covered. So the process is to uncover them. And that's done as you described by by following the processes of devotional service, practicing sadhana bhakti, chiefly the chanting of Hare Krishna, Jato Dorpana Marjanam. We have to cleanse the heart. That's the process of uncovering the actual nature of the soul. That's how we get to our sort of city. So all of these different qualities manifest naturally, automatically, as they are gradually uncovered by the process of sadhana bhakti. There's no need to endeavor separately to try to cultivate those qualities, nor is there a means to do that. The only real process is the practice of sadhana bhakti as is prescribed by our acharyas. That's the process. There isn't anything else. That's all there is. I also have a comment about this question of the material world being pleasant for the devotees, and I'm I'm assuming the individual who made that comment was basing that comment on various statements that Srila Prabhupada made to the effect that for a pure devotee, at least, it doesn't matter whether they are in Vaikuntha or within the scope of material nature, heaven or hell are all the same, and nothing matters really as far as where a devotee is situated, so long as they are able to always remember the lotus feet of Krishna. There is one statement given by Srila Prabhupada in Krishna book in chapter 69, in which Narada visits the different homes of Krishna. Srila Prabhupada says there, a pure devotee never asks for any kind of material or spiritual benediction from the Lord. His only prayer is that he may not forget the lotus feet of the Lord in any condition of life. A pure devotee does not care whether he is put into heaven or hell. He is satisfied anywhere, provided he can constantly remember the lotus feet of the Lord. Lord Chaitanya taught this same process of prayer in his Shikshastika, in which he clearly stated that all he wanted was devotional service, birth after birth. A pure devotee does not even want to stop the repetition of birth and death. A pure devotee, to a pure devotee, it does not matter whether he has to take birth again in the various species of life. His only ambition is that he not forget the lotus feet of the Lord in any condition of life. Elsewhere, Srila Prabhupada describes that for a devotee who is engaged purely in the Lord's devotional service, wherever he is Vaikuntha. Wherever he may be, will be non-different from Vaikuntha or Vrindavan, because he is always remembering Krishna, and he sees Krishna everywhere in everything. So wherever he is Vrindavan. But we're talking now about pure devotees, and this does not necessarily apply to a neophyte. Anyway, that's Peter Prabhupada has made these kinds of statements. Hare Krishna.
Hi. Oh, thank you so much, Boo. It's always my favorite part to hear you. Grantaraj, we will end here. Grantaraj, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.